I think something else you mentioned earlier is the politics of why did his really impressive collection end up here in Manchester versus like at the British Museum or something like that.
There's sort of two bits there. Like one of them, when he went to Texas, he met this very famous naturalist called Dr. Adolphus Heermann, who had been rumoured to be dead. So he was very surprised to meet him, but he had a medical condition. He had locomotor ataxia, it's called, which meant that he couldn't really ride a horse. So what he used to do was Dresser used to tie him in the saddle on the horse, so that he couldn't fall off the horse, and they would go out shooting birds.
Wow.
So after Dresser came back, he sent a letter to Adolphus Heermann and said, get hold of as many swallow-tailed kites, this one, as you can, maybe 30 or 40, that he would, trade off and swap with his friends. And the going rate was about 30 shillings, which I think is quite a lot of money. But the other point you made there was about, why has his collection come to Manchester? And again, these usually either have a political or a social reason. That Henry Dresser fell out with the curator at the British Museum because they'd been in partnership to produce a book. They fell out, and so Henry Dresser was adamant that his collection wasn't going to go to the British Museum of Natural History, the Natural History Museum as it is now. So it came to Manchester for a pretty small sum at the time. It had been offered, there's a rumour that Chicago had offered $15,000 to buy the collection.
Really?
But we got it for, I think it was £1,000.
Wow.
Which is still a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
But that kind of reflects the kind of changing attitudes to what a museum should be as well. I mean, at that time, Henry Dresser's collection would have been viewed as fantastic. I mean, it is a fantastic collection, because it contains so many rare specimens and from famous collectors and from remote places. Whereas today, I think increasingly museum collections would be graded in terms of how useful they are for contemporary types of research. So things like large sample sizes and series from different places. So it's interesting how the collection's viewed at different times.
How the use of it and the role of it. And then this way that we're talking about it now is completely different use that probably people, you're saying nowadays, are starting to take this sort of a view of collections, a more human and personal and historical way to look at it. But before that, it was about samples and sizes and species and types.
So like on our galleries, there are things like there's an individual of each species, and it's like a tiger, or it's the tiger, or just tiger, and it doesn't tell you anything about that thing's individual history. And I think that's a deliberate attempt to kind of make the museum into a little version of the world. Yeah,
and also make it less objective and less political in a way, kind of, because if you said this tiger was actually a pet of someone who had an estate in India, during the empire, and was caught by, it starts to get a lot more complex. Whereas if you just look at it as a tiger or a bird.
Yeah, it's like what disciplines do you value? What is your kind of order of, how do you value one subject or one way of looking at it over another? Is interesting. I think, and maybe increasingly it's about looking at things in different ways, which are just as valid as each other.